Hey everyone, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to cover the file upload component and how it works inside of a Salesforce Screen Flow. And I'm going to solve two key issues that come up a lot with this component. The first is one, making it required. And then the second is making the file upload component work on a single screen. And so let's dive in. You'll notice I have the flow area of Salesforce open here, and I'm just going to create a new flow. And this file upload component just works with screen flows, so we'll leave that default selection and press create. And we'll just jump in by adding a screen to our canvas. So I'm going to click the add element here, and I'm going to pick screen. And in this example scenario, we're going to pretend that we are an admin and we need to make a screen flow that creates a case. So I'm going to name this screen create case screen. And then I'll just hide the header, and in the configure footer section, I'll just hide the pause button. In order to make the case, we'll keep it real simple here, and we will just have a text for the subject. So I'll just call this subject. And I just clicked on this text component once, and it created the subject it created the text component on the screen, and I named that subject. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to click long text area, and we'll just call this the description. And for the sake of this video, we'll keep it short and pretend those are the only fields we need to create the case. Obviously, because this is a video about file uploads, we're going to add the file upload component as well by clicking it once. You'll notice that once it gets added to the screen, there are some options over here on the right. And the first one is just the API name, and that's the name of this actual component. And so I tend to just call it file upload. You could really name it anything. No one really sees that, so just name it whatever you want. This second option is the file upload label, and that's what the end user will see when they're looking at this upload area. And I like to just call this like attachments, but you could name it really anything. And you see that once we give it a label and an API name, it renders here on the screen. There's a couple other things that I want to point out over here on the right. We're not going to go through all of these, but we will talk about the accepted formats here. So if you want to restrict what types of files could be uploaded, you could provide a format. So let's say you only wanted to have spreadsheets uploaded, or like comma separated value spreadsheets. You could specify the format .csv, and that's all that will be allowed to be uploaded. So that's kind of a cool functionality. This other one, the content document IDs, we will get to later. Down here at the bottom is another important one called related record ID. And this is really useful if you've already created a record inside of the Salesforce Flow. You can specify the ID of that record here, and it will attach your file to that record. In this scenario, where we're creating a new record at the same time that we're uploading a file, we can't do that because we don't have the ID. I'm going to show you how to get around that here in a second. And then the final thing I'd like to point out about this section is you'll notice that there isn't a toggle or an option to make it required. And so we need to build that, and we're going to do that next. Before we leave this page, I'm going to scroll down here in the file upload section, and I'm going to click advanced. And then I'm going to click manually assign variables, and you'll see that this lets us store the output of the file upload into select variables inside of the flow. And this is where the content document IDs variable comes into play. So inside of Salesforce, a file is also known as a content document ID on the back end. It's kind of the same way that like a task and an activity are the same thing. The S object name for a file is a content document. And when you upload a file, you can store the ID of that file in this variable if you specify it down here in the advanced section. And we are going to do that. So I'm going to click once here under Content Document IDs. I'm going to click New Resource. And for resource type, I will select Variable. I'm just going to call this Content Document IDs. The data type will be text, and I'm going to allow multiple values and press Done. And so once again, if someone uploads a file here, and then they go to the next screen or they press Next, the ID of that file will get stored in this collection variable. We're going to use that multiple times in order to get this to work. So let's press done, and I'm going to press save just so I can save my work. I'll just call this screen case file upload, and we'll press save. And so the first thing that I wanted to show you with this is how to make that field or how to make the file upload required. And as you can see, there was no toggle there to just flip it on and make it required. So we kind of have to build a workaround. In order to do that, we're going to need a couple other variables. So I'm going to build them first, and then I'll explain them right after we build them. So I'm going to open up the toolbox over here on the right, and I'm going to click New Resource. And the resource type will be a variable, and we're going to call this resource the file count. And the data type will be a number, and I'm going to change the decimal places of this to be 0, so that there's not like 2.00 or something like that. I'll press done, and then we'll press save. And so what I can do now is add a new element to this flow, and I'm going to add the assignment element. And we'll say assign variables. And I'm going to set that file count variable, that number that we just created. And I'm going to use this equals count operator to set it to equal the count of the collection of our content document IDs. And remember, this is the text collection that we are manually assigning or outputting the count or the file IDs into after they've been uploaded. And we'll press save. And so now what we have is we have our screen. When a user presses next, Salesforce will record the number of files that have been uploaded. And so what we can do from here is use a decision element. So I'm going to click add element. I'm going to type in decision. And I can say were files uploaded? ? And then I'll make two outcomes. So we have our new outcome here, and I'll say no. And in this scenario, what we'll do is we'll say that the file count number variable equals 0, which means that no files were uploaded. And I just manually clicked on the value and typed in the number 0. I'll also add another outcome here, and we'll call this yes, and we'll say that the file count number is greater than 0, which means a file was uploaded. And if you don't care about having the file upload required, if that doesn't matter to you, you can just skip to the next part of this video where I go over how to insert the document and the case and just have it all be on one screen. But with this decision, what we can now do is save it, and in the no path, what we can do is we can just route this no path by clicking add element. We can press connect to element, and we can just route it back to our case screen, so that if no files were uploaded, they just get sent back to the case screen until they upload a file. And what we'll do on the case screen is we'll open that up, and then we can add in a display text by scrolling down, and from the display section, adding display text, and we'll just call this file upload required. I mean, you could also just call it, like display text 1, DT1. But here we can put a message, and we'll say, please upload a file. And you could highlight it, you could make it really bold, you could put it in like a fancy color like green or something. Yeah, here we'll make it like green. Okay, done. Wow, that's like super annoying green. Maybe we'll do like red. Done. Okay, please upload a file. So a user will definitely see that. And then what we can do for this display text is we can use that same number variable to conditionally display this text only if the number is 0. So we'll say all conditions are met, and we'll say that our file count number equals 0. And again, you don't have to do this if you don't want to require the file. This is only if you want to require the file. We'll press done, and done again, and we'll press save. And so now let's kind of like take a look at how this works. So I'll press debug, and we see that our screen shows up here. We can put in a subject of test and a description of test, and we will not upload any files. You can see that our please upload a file message is not present. When I press next, Salesforce runs through, and over here on the right, you can see that the assignment assigned the file count to be equal to 0 because it was just counting the content document IDs and didn't find anything. Then our decision ran, it looped back to the screen, and we see this message, please upload a file. One thing you will notice is that the word test in the subject and the word test in the description were erased. So we will want to fix that for our end users to make sure that they don't lose their work when we're kind of implementing this process. So let's take care of that now. I'm going to close out the debug. I'm going to make 2 new resources, and I'm going to do that here inside the assigned variables assignment. We'll click that open. We'll click add assignment, and we'll make a new resource, and it will be the variable type, and we'll say that this is the subject variable resource, and the data type will be text. And we're going to leave the default value empty and press done. And we'll say that the subject variable is going to be set to the subject. I'm typing in the word subject here from our screen. And then I'm going to repeat that again by making a new resource for the description. So resource type will be variable. We'll call this the description variable. The data type will be text. And again, I'm going to leave the default value to be empty and press done. We're going to assign the value of the description from our screen into this description value, and we'll press save. And so what's going to happen is a user is going to type in their inputs on the first screen, and then this assignment will run, and it will set the file count to 0, and it will also set these variables. We can go back to our screen now, and in the subject, we can set the default value to be equal to that subject variable. And we'll do the same thing for the description by clicking it, and in this default value section, we can click insert a resource, type in DES, and then we'll select our description variable. And so what will happen now is that the first time the user sees this screen, nothing will be present here, but after that, our assignment will save the values that the user already typed in, and then if they get rerouted to this screen again, it will load those values. That way they don't lose their work. I'll press done, and I'll press save. And we can test that out real quick. So I'll press debug. We'll run this. We'll do test description. And again, I'm not going to upload a file so that we can trigger the error. I'll press next, and you'll see that the error was triggered, but our subject and description were no longer removed. And I think that's really important if you're going to require this field, that you don't make users lose all their work, and that's how you can avoid it. So now that we have this in place, we can close that out, and we will go on to the section of what we do when the files are successfully uploaded. And so that will happen in our yes path. So our decision will run, it'll say were files uploaded, the answer will be yes, and at that point we're ready to create a case. So I'm going to click add element, I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to select create records. And we're going to create a case record. And then we're going to use separate resources and literal values to create this case. So the object type will be case. And of course, in your scenario, you'll want to use whatever object you're actually working with. For me, I'm just going to set the fields for subject, and I'm going to set the fields for description. And so I'm going to add these 2 fields here, and then their values I will set to be equal to the subject on the screen and the description on the screen. And you could use the subject from the screen or the description on the screen because the value will be populated in the yes outcome. It's only when it gets refreshed is there sort of an issue. So we can map either one there. And that's all we need to do for creating the case. So I'll press save. And now what we need to do is we need to create a link in Salesforce between our file, which has been uploaded, and our case. So it's helpful to understand the object model behind files, and there's kind of 2 key objects. One is the content document, which we've already kind of worked with, and then there's something called a content document link. And so if the content document is the file, the content document link is another record that connects our file with our case. And so the file or the link is kind of in the middle, and the case is on one side, or maybe the file is on one side, the case is on the other, and the link in the middle kind of connects the 2. If you don't fully understand that, that's totally okay. I think as we build it here together, you might understand it a little bit better. So after our case, we are going to click add an element, and here we're going to build a loop. So I'm going to type in loop, and we'll select that. And so we're going to loop through files. So I'm going to loop through the files, and the collection variable is the content document IDs that we assigned in our case screen. So I'll click that and I'll press save. And now in the next part of our loop, we're going to actually create a content document link record in order to be inserted at the end of our flow. And we're going to need two new variables to do that. So here in the toolbox, I'm going to click New Resource. Resource type, I'm going to choose Variable. And I'm going to type in the word Single Content Doc Link. The data type for this will be a record, and this will be the Content Document Link S-object type. So it'll look like this, and I'm going to press Done. And I'm going to make one more variable, and this will actually be a collection variable. I'm going to press New Resource. Resource type will be Variable. And I'm going to call this Content, oops, if I could spell, Content Document Link. I'll just call this Collection. The data type will be a record. It's going to be that same S-object type of a Content Document Link. And the only difference here, and this is super important, is that you're going to need to allow multiple values. And we'll press Done. Now that we've built those two variables out, we can add an assignment to our loop. So we'll click Add Assignment, or excuse me, Add Element. I'll type in Assignment and click it once. And I'm going to create Content Document Link. That's what I'll name this. And in our variable section, I'm going to click Search Variables, and I'm just going to choose the record single variable that we just created called Single Content Doc Link. And you'll see that there are some fields here. So by clicking that record variable once, I get the option to choose some more fields. And so the first field I'm going to choose is the Content Document ID, this top one. And we're going to set that to be equal to the current item from the loop. And so because the loop is just looping through a text collection, which represents the ID of all the content documents, or the ID of all the files that were uploaded to the screen, we can just reference that directly here. The second field I'm going to set, again, by clicking Add Row, and then in the record single variable selection or area, I'm going to click Single Content Document Link. I'm going to choose the linked entity ID. And we're going to set this equal. I'm going to click once in the value section. I'm going to type in the word case, and you'll see that a new variable has been created automatically for us by Salesforce called the case ID from create_a_case. So our create records over here on the left, once we added this to the canvas, Salesforce automatically creates this variable, which we can reference here in order to create this new content document link record. And again, what's happening here is we're establishing a link between our file and our case. And so we've specified our file ID up here in the top assignment variable for the field. And then in the bottom one, we've specified the case. The final thing we need to do is add this single record into that collection. So from the record collection variable that we already created, I'm going to select Content Document Link Collection. I'm going to click Add, and then I'm going to select Single Content Document Link. I'm just going to click it once, and then I'm going to click some white space here on the variable, and that way this item will be added to that collection, and I'll press Save. So I'll close out this, and we only have one final step before we're done. And so what I'm going to do now is click Add Element, click Create Records, and we'll say Create Content Document Links. And we're going to create multiple records, and the record collection will be the Content Document Link Collection. And the reason we built it this way is because you may end up allowing users to upload multiple files, and this will support that. So let's press Save now, and we can debug our flow. So we'll take it from the very top, where we're going to run our flow, and you could trigger this screen flow like anywhere a screen flow is able to be run, like a utility item from the bottom of an app menu. But we'll put in a subject. We'll say test case description. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to upload a file. So I'll press next, and our error gets triggered. And so now what I'll do is I will upload a file. And I guess a couple things here, you'll notice that our subject and description stayed, so that's perfect. And we got our red error message, so that's also perfect. I have a file here, just looks like this. It says test document. I'm just going to drag that from the desktop over here on the right. I'm going to put it here in the upload file section. And you can see that it uploads the files right now. So the file just got created in Salesforce, even though we didn't do anything else. This green check mark means that it got created. We'll press done. When I press next, that file that just got created will have its ID added to our text collection called content document IDs. Our assignment will run. It'll update the file count to be greater than 0, and then our case is going to get created, and then the loop will run and it will associate that new file with our case. So let's press next. You see everything kind of runs through. And if you're really curious, you can kind of look over here on the debug and you can see what I was talking about, where the file count got set to 1, and so the outcome that was executed was the yes outcome. We created our case, then we looped through the text collection with our file ID, and we created a new content document link which connects the file ID with the case ID, and you can see both of those values here in the result section. That ended our loop, and then it created the content document link record inside of Salesforce. And so that actually happened. So if we go look at the open case list here, and I refresh this, we'll see that a new case got created at right now. And if we click this open, and then look at the related, we can see that our attachment automatically got uploaded. And that's it. That's how you make this work. So just as a reminder, or in conclusion, this was about the file upload component, and this is how you get it to, 1, be required, but 2, get it to work on a single screen.